Welcome, everyone, to the Wild Divine Bliss podcast, where we explore spontaneous and spiritual experiences, including Kundalini type phenomenon through psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, and most importantly, lived experience. And this podcast focuses on normalization, integration, and clear thinking so we can create language and frameworks for experiences that don't yet neatly fit into any existing model. And today, I'm really excited for our guest. He is someone whose life and work sit right at the intersection of rigorous science and the deepest mysteries of consciousness, which of course makes him a perfect person to talk to us about all of this. So Dr. Thomas Brophy holds a PhD in physics from the University of Colorado Boulder, and his early career took him to places that actually most of us only dream about. He's worked on NASA's Voyager and Cassini spacecraft projects, served as a National Science Foundation exchange scientist in Tokyo, and published pioneering research in planetary physics and astrodynamics. This is a man who's literally mapped the cosmos, especially in his last book here, or this book, The Mechanism Demands a Mysticism, which we'll talk more about later. It's actually a pretty awesome book. And then something happened because Dr. Brophy didn't stop at the outer universe. He actually turned his scientific mind towards the inner universe. So in this book, The Mechanism Demands a Mysticism, he explores the fundamental science and ontology of consciousness. And his archaeoastronomy research, something I've always thought was super cool, on research on prehistoric Egypt, he published The Origin Map and Black Genesis, co-authored with Robert Brophy. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And he has been cited in conversations about extraterrestrial and transhuman intelligence. So, wow, this is going to be amazing. And so Dr. Brophy also went on to lead the California Institute for Human Science, where I actually met him first, and where he guided the school to full regional accreditation as a mind, body, and spiritual integral university. And today he serves as the president of the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is one of the most respected organizations in the whole world for the study of consciousness. So please welcome Dr. Thomas Brophy. I'm so happy to have you here today for this conversation.
Hi, Corrine. I'm really glad to be here. Love the theme of this unique show, so it's really great.
Thank you. You know, and this show always circles around Kundalini phenomenon or sudden spiritual experiences. And what I got out of actually reading for parts of your book, I realized something interesting that I used to call them transcendent experiences before I had a label. And this is what your whole, actually, you look at your framework as transcendent experiences. And I was like, wow, I should readopt that because it kind of really opens up the world of looking at these experiences rather than through the narrow lens of it's a Kundalini experience, which has a lot of loaded language around it, or sudden spiritual experience is more transcendent. And I think that was the way that Gopi Krishna probably also talked about it in the beginning. So anyway, what I really wanted to hear about is your experiences. How did you get drawn to these subjects? And then, when would you say is the first time you really had a, let's say, really marked or a heightened experience of transcendence? And when it happened, like, how did you describe it to yourself?
Okay. Well, how about I start with the second of those?
Yeah, please.
And actually, what I later identified as sort of the first powerful experience of movement of Kundalini energy. So specifically that, rather than other kinds of transcendent experiences. And so
Yeah.
I was thinking about that before the show. So that question took me back to 1991. I was on a tatami mat in my little tiny apartment in Tokyo, and it was a very small room, 6-mat room was my apartment. And they measure the size of rooms by tatami mats. And so it's
I didn't know that.
Roku 6-mat room, 6-mat apartment, and so that was when I was at the University of Tokyo as an exchange scientist, as National Science Foundation exchange scientist. So this happened to me one evening when I was there, and I experienced a feeling of energy transcendence moving up through my legs and like through my feet and through my body. And it was a very unpleasant
Mm,
experience. And I was feeling like was I didn't know if I was going crazy or like
mm.
if this energy it was like taking over my body and moving up. And I thought, I didn't know what was going to happen. Like when it took over my heart and my head,
Wow. Yeah.
would it kill me? So it was
Hmm.
really a scary, unpleasant experience. So much so that I called a crisis hotline in
Okay.
Japan. There was like a foreigner's crisis hotline phone number, and I called that and talked to somebody, and thankfully they kind of they said, like, well, we could send medical people out, but I don't know if you want to do that because they'd probably take you to the hospital,
Yeah.
psychiatric ward in Tokyo as a foreigner. Wouldn't necessarily be a good experience. So they helped me decide to just ride it out, the experience, and I did. And I later realized it fit well with the start of a Kundalini process.
Interesting.
And it was a time when, after that, other things, like I mentioned in the book, other experiences, events, transcendent experiences were happening for me. And those really accelerated after that frightening experience.
Wow.
And like I called them in the book, I used transcendent experiences, and I also called them waking dreams. So I had like during waking state experiences of other lifetimes. People could interpret it as a past life experience or other lifetimes, very real. And my dream life really transformed, and I started to have continuity of awareness sometimes from waking state to falling asleep and into the dream state. And then that's kind of lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
And so when you have continuity of awareness, normally, like now, normally I don't have continuity of awareness most nights. I wake up in the morning and there's not like I don't consciously watch my body mind go through the whole process of falling asleep, becoming asleep,
Mm.
dreaming, and then even the deep dreamless state, which we don't normally experience except in meditate in deep meditation, the causal
Hmm.
body. So
Yeah. Wow. Well, there's a lot there. So, actually, what I want to back up to is your original experience because I did read that section in your book. So, I wanted to ask you, like, what was happening before that, let's say, the original Kundalini experience happened in Tokyo? Like, what were you doing? What do you think sparked any of this? What was happening around you
so
or
I
in your
had
world?
I'd done meditation, different kinds of meditation for many years before that,
Yeah.
and I'd done Zen in Japan 7 years previously. So I'd lived in Japan basically my senior year in college and did Zen there too, and was seeking out and doing all sorts of different meditation practices. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would go to Sufi Zikr retreat and Christian contemplative meditation retreats and any kind of interreligious, multiple different
Hmm.
methods. I was really drawn to those retreats and actually practicing different meditation, esoteric meditation practices. And so I've been doing that for many years, like
Wow.
maybe 10 years before that experience.
It was so interesting. So you're like already primed. It's like you've already been on this track of having a spiritual quest, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I my quest was like to understand how anomalous cognitive experiences,
Mm.
we would call psi phenomena today, or how they work. Because I had them from a young age. I had experiences
Yeah.
like that from a young age, and the culture around me, would say that those experiences, you can't have those experiences because the
Yeah.
scientific worldview says they can't be real experiences. So that was why I went into the study of physics, fundamental science, and I wanted to address that question. We also call it the mind-body problem as well,
Yeah.
and the the hard problem of consciousness now in the scientific community, that's what it's called. So yeah, as part of that quest, which I had really since high school age, I was doing the different meditation traditions and readings. And so before that real start of movement of energy that I mentioned in Japan, I was deep into, while I was doing my academic science physics studies, I was
Yeah.
also on the side studying esoteric philosophy and especially like all the LSA Bailey books,
Yeah. Wow.
the treatise on cosmic fire. And through that, I was reading books like J. Krishnamurti, and I was really drawn to the importance. I knew that at that time that reading Krishnamurti, to me, it seemed like a really important thing to do. I felt like there was really important information in there, and uh, so I would read it, but it was kind of dense, kind of difficult reading, and I'd often read it late at night and fall asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then when I had these powerful energetic experiences, that was like drinking cool water when you're parched and thirsty, and I suddenly realized that's what Krishnamurti was talking about, and
Oh,
so
wow.
his writings just became alive to me and vibrant after having that experience of the energetic movement.
Yeah. It's
So
like it sounds like it instead of it just being like theoretical, that it became you were living it. It's a real like a lived experience of what he was talking about.
yeah,
Huh.
and that experience of kind of viscerally, those writings becoming alive to me as connected in some way to what I was energetically experiencing
Mhm.
made me start to label that energetic movement as Kundalini. Because
Interesting. Yeah.
Krishnamurti, when he talks about the pro in his writings and like his friends' writings about him, they talk about it. He called it the process, and it was a Kundalini
Mhm.
process that he wrote about. So that's when I started to think of it as maybe Kundalini energy moving in me too, and
Yeah.
then read all the specific books on Kundalini, like Gopi Krishna you mentioned, and Lisa Nella, and this is decades ago, and other collections of essays about the Kundalini process.
Wow. So that's so interesting. You name it a process. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how is it a process rather than like, let's say, a one-time experience or something you would aspire to and then just leave. But yeah, I'm really curious to hear you expand on that.
Yeah, I think it is a real life process. It's like it's like it's like life is a process, and we're born into this world. We're only born once, but the lifetime itself is a process.
Yeah.
And so I think the beginning of Kundalini energy movement in a strong way is like another birth. And so then everything after that is the rest of the life process, just like any life after a birth is a whole process.
Yeah, and I've heard people talk about Kundalini energy as looking at it through, I think, Gopi Krishna's perspective of it being an evolutionary process of the human being. And
Yeah.
it's something that I hadn't thought about myself either. It's like with, because I call them, when I've had Kundalini experiences, they always seem to be like electron leaps in consciousness, where it's like you don't just gradually increase your consciousness. It's like all of a sudden it's like from 0 to 100. It's like an electron leap. And then I feel like then you're learning it's all I call it like the piano of consciousness, like where you're able to play the piano, the octaves keep getting higher and higher, but you still have to integrate that into life by learning how to now you don't just have two octaves to work with. It's like now you have to remember, oh yeah, I did reach that state before. Now how can I integrate this into my song of life,
Yeah.
to continue to go. And I need constant reminders all the time, it's of where consciousness can go because like when you've experienced it, like, oh, I know I can get there, but the question is how. So I'm really curious, like, how do you feel like those experiences have changed your perspective, let's say slowly over time, or maybe they just reconfirmed a perspective you've had? Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear how you feel like it's just affected your life path so far and
Yeah. Well, just
anything
to
like that.
connect with what you were saying about how it's a
Yeah.
process and like the LSA Bailey materials, they're really connected to theosophy and they're like an outgrowth of
Oh, yeah, that's
theosophy
right.
and
Yeah.
esoteric Christianity generally, that they talk about initiations that
Mhm.
humans go through. And the construct there is that each initiation it involves a movement of Kundalini energy, and they're
Mhm.
all involved in movement of Kundalini energy. And it's a long process. It can take many lifetimes, and you might go through an initiation in one lifetime, and you might go through a mini initiation or a movement, and all of that can involve Kundalini energy. And so the different descriptions of different individual experiences of Kundalini energy movement, they could well be talking about, the same energy, but just in a different body, and also in a different stage of initiation level, or the multi-lifetime process.
Yeah.
And so we were going through that as how it's a process, and that's how I experienced it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so the one like unpleasant thing that I described was like when I first started to realize after that, processing that, in the months and years later, I I I started to label it as Kundalini movement, and I had many other energetic processes
Okay.
after that. They weren't
Huh.
all some were more like the classical that you hear about types of Kundalini energetic experiences as well. So them all fitting the pattern, maybe label it all as Kundalini, and it's a kind of a sacred thing. So I don't normally use the word Kundalini very much.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you usually call it?
just energetic movement.
Yeah, that's how, like, when I first had my, I'd say, massive electron leap of energy moving through me, I didn't define it as Kundalini myself at all. As at first,
Mm.
I hadn't even heard of Kundalini. And then it was like, well, this seemed like a massive force of electricity moving through me that expanded my consciousness to, it was more like it felt like I was finally home, is the best way to put it. But it was the person was with me who was really familiar with it because he was a psychotherapist and had studied, Jung, and been part of the spiritual emergency network, et cetera. And he's like, I know what's going on for you. But I was like, nah. And then I looked into it, I thought this doesn't fit the classical model. So that can't possibly be what happened to me.
Yes.
And it was, yeah. So it's like there's so many nuances, it seems like that. Would you
Yeah.
differ
I
it?
think there isn't
Yeah.
really a classical model.
Yeah.
Some people say there's a classical model, but
Hmm.
like you say, that there's many very different ways to
Yeah.
experience it.
Yeah, I actually enjoy following the research. The academic research is starting to emerge on this and looking at, there are over 900 research subjects now worldwide who've been polled, of course, through qualitative methods to look at their experiences. And so many of them are, the similarities are the expansion of consciousness, like an immediate expansion and a feeling of electricity. But everything else seems to, some follow a pattern and some don't necessarily. Some of it, the only thing that's the same is like somehow they're changed over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are Kundalini meditation practices like
Yeah.
the Yogi Bhajan stuff, where
Hmm.
you do a certain type of breathing and chanting, and those might, those following a specific type of practice, they might tend to generate a specific type of experience. And but I know your show is about spontaneous experiences, and so that's why I wanted to share my
Oh,
experience,
definitely.
which was spontaneous and not. I wasn't following a Kundalini energy yogic practice. I'd been doing standard Zen and that kind of and other kinds of standard or esoteric Christian meditation practices, and but it was spontaneous in
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And that's, sorry.
No, it's not.
That's something I actually am finding with the guests on my thread on my podcast so far is almost everyone was drawn to spiritual practices before they had, let's call it a Kundalini experience, which is really fascinating to think it. And many people, they were just, let's say born this way. Like, I was always born very curious about spirituality and physics and how it all fit together. And I would even dream about it when I was a kid. I mean, some people, they don't think about it at all. And it's just a complete shock in reality. It's a complete shock for them about it's just three-dimensional normal reality. And then all of a sudden, like the next minute, they're psychic and they see, far beyond the veil.
Yeah, it's almost
Yeah.
like there's a thing out there, an energetic entity out there. We could call it the super
Ah.
Kundalini entity that's out there and watching us humans. And when we start to prepare ourselves through some kind of spiritual practice or interest, we we get ready to receive the energy, and it sees, and it does engage with us at those times.
That's a different perspective. You tell me more about that. It's like I love hearing different perspectives on this.
So
So you
it's
feel like
just,
it just do you feel like it's innate in human beings, or is it part of, let's say, a greater intelligent force? Yeah, tell me more.
well, on that view, it might be even, transhuman, beyond the human, and a, whatever energy is out there in the universe that some people call God or whatever is ready to engage with the physical
Mhm.
human bodies that prepare themselves in one way. So, like when the physical human body prepares itself to connect with this energy, the energy, the super intelligent transhuman energy out there does connect.
Wow, yeah.
Like the esoteric Christian tradition that calls it the angel of the presence. And there's a saying that when the angel of the presence approaches you, it's terrible. When the angel of the presence meets you, it's bliss.
Wow, I have never heard that.
So that's why I started out with my kind of terrible experience, which was it's also kind of like a anxiety attack, that
Mhm.
what that feeling was. And but then it opened up a whole energetic process when I didn't shunt it, when I didn't try to cut it off, and I had dreams where I would very real dreams. That's why I call them waking dreams, where I would have astral body level communications with other teachers, great
Wow.
teachers, yogis, and sometimes I would be the teacher in the dreams. People in my life, and some of the dreams were precognitive of events that actually happened in the world,
Mhm.
and also energetic processes in relationship with others were very powerful too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I had one teacher call it that when you get a psychic connection with someone, they're open gates, and it just sometimes has to do with, past life relationships, sometimes it's literally genetic memory, sometimes it's, who knows what, but sometimes those gates are very open, and it's really easy to transmit psychic information back and forth, and you might dream about someone, they call you, or you already know what someone needs if they're in trouble even without you ever having to, like, talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a retreat with an energetic teacher named Richard Moss. He's a medical doctor, and he teaches about this kind of stuff, and he calls it energy sharing. You can kind of open yourself to share energy, and it doesn't have to be in a deep, intimate way, just with people in your environment.
Yeah.
And you want to be careful if you're doing it when you're driving or something like that, because lose focus. But this kind of energy sharing we can do in the environment with other people and animals and plants and everything in our environment. Is
Yeah. And actually, that brings me to a word you had coined called prana, the lifetrons.
oh yeah,
Yeah. And does this relate to the lifetrons? Would you say like the energy exchange?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, and pranic butterflies, was that another
Hmm.
term I used? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so, kind of following along the physics way of thinking, where, physicists break down all the physical world into subparts and molecules and atoms and that kind of thing. You just apply that kind of thinking to the energetic world and the spiritual world. You start to think about, oh, maybe this energetic process that's going on with us that we call movement of Kundalini energy, it could be broken down into little spiritual elements, little energetic elements that may have an entity of their own, like just like the organs of our physical body have an existence of their own, but they all have to work together to make us a physical body. There may be parts of the energetic process too that have their own
Mm.
existence and own identity in some way.
Oh, I like that. So would you say that those things are not always present, but if you are more expanded in consciousness through Kundalini energy, then they do become more present?
I kind of think of them as always present, but
Mm.
us not always aware of them. Not all of us
Okay.
always consciously aware of them and like working with them interactively. And so through our Kundalini energy and our general energetic awakening experiences, we have moments of becoming more actively involved in communicating with those chronic butterflies or elemental aspects of the energetic fields that make up our body and the
Yeah.
whole world. And so, yeah, I think of them as always there, but us not always aware of them and the potential for us
Huh.
to interact consciously in awareness with them.
So I've got two theoretical questions on that. So would you, and I go back and forth on this myself, but do you think that Kundalini energy is the same as pranic energy, or what's your perspective on that?
I think of it as, a, well, I think of Kundalini energy as a type of pranic energy, and people use those words in different ways. So I think of basically a whole field of energy that the esoteric Christian traditions call the astral body or the astral body or the etheric body or and then there's beyond that, the causal body, and so Kundalini and Chi energy. I think those is all those as names for the same thing, but that doesn't really mean a lot. Just like we could call all the physical world atoms, but
Good point in front of
there's
it that
really
way. That's
different types.
great. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And I was also wondering about your perspective on healing and healing capacity with either prana, chi, kundalini energy, what your experience might be with that as well.
I think it's definitely something we experience when we get into these states and processes.
Hmm.
The the whole field of energetic healing is a big field to study scientifically and approach carefully. The, you're calling up an interesting memory. Our chief scientist at IONS. Okay, this isn't IONS talk. This is the personal talk. But Dean Radin, he had a interview with Sadhguru, a big
Yeah.
guru. It was it's out on the web, and this was just last fall, where they were talking. And they talked about this question of should you use energy, you know, esoteric energy, psychic abilities for healing. And it was interesting that Sadhguru
Oh.
said, no, you shouldn't do that. And,
Oh.
Dean and IONS, we studied that. That's one of the things we try to study scientifically and research,
Hmm.
careful research protocols. But we were kind of interested and a little surprised to hear Sadhguru say, well, you shouldn't do that because it's like it's something you shouldn't mess with. And that really connects with kind of the biblical tradition that says things along those lines too. So it's a really complex topic.
Ah, interesting. And you shouldn't mess with it. I wonder why. Now I'm curious. Now I want to know why. Oh, that's fascinating. I'm going to have to check out that podcast and yeah, come back and ask you more questions on that because I have noticed a lot of people who are, let's say, call them Kundalini activated, have gotten into the healing arts, whether it be physical healing or even the healing of consciousness, of bringing
Yeah,
people a new way of seeing the world, which is, I think, part of your life's work. Like what you've been doing since you've been in college is really bridging those worlds, is like healing the gap.
yeah,
So I'm
it is.
wondering, like, is it physical healing, mental, emotional? It's still healing.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
there's the whole interesting thing going on now in the world with changes in the UAPs relationship with humanity and
Mhm.
disclosure, and that there may be a kind of a healing. The way you're using the word healing brings that up, is that there may be a kind of healing going on with all of humanity in its ability to and process of connecting with the transhuman
Mhm.
intelligences that exist in the world too. And that's a kind of a healing on a whole of humanity level too, which is a really interesting thing that seems to be going on now.
Well, that's really, I hadn't thought about that. It's like healing the consciousness. It's opening up. So you see the world through different paradigms,
Yeah,
opening up the paradigm. And something I wonder about, we have different types of consciousness that can interact with us humans, whether it be ET consciousness, angelic consciousness, earth consciousness, ancestors. I mean, there's so many different types of beings. And like you were saying, you're able to access some of that through the dream world as well, and then verify it.
yeah,
And I've had those experiences as well, where it's like, that was such a vivid dream. And then it's like, wow, oh my God, I had met that person in my dream last night and then there they are, So
yeah. Those kind of
yeah.
profound verificational experiences happen so much, and IONS has been doing for decades, research, psi research, the whole category of psi research is all on this kind of interaction of this level of energy with the physical world. And of course, the mainstream physical scientific mind still thinks it can't happen because it thinks in terms of 19th century classical physics, and also because modern physics, quantum physics, doesn't contain the consciousness aspect. Quantum physics has a kind of opening to the possibility of connecting with beyond the physical realm. We're calling the astral dimension or pranic energy or Kundalini energy.
Yeah.
Uh, so quantum physics kind of opens up that possibility, but standard physics doesn't include that other aspect of the world that can affect the way the physical world moves, the physical world evolves, and
Yes.
the things that happen, the agency in the physical world that we humans can have agency in the physical world, and maybe other kinds of intelligences can also have agency in the
Yeah.
physical world. But we're that's another thing that we're trying to do is build that bridge so that the there can be bridges from the conventional scientific
Yeah.
mind to the newly expanded scientific mind that can see that there can be agency in the world. But it's a long and step-by-step difficult process to build those bridges.
Yeah, entirely. I can totally see that. God, there's like so much to say about all this. Would you say that your, let's say, experiences of Kundalini or expanded states of consciousness that you've had that have been sudden over time, do you think, I think I already know the answer, but would you say that they really influence your work today that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So also in Japan, I connected with Hiroshi Motoyama, who was the founder of CIHS, he ended up
Wow.
inviting me to go to work there. And he was a yogi and scientist who really practiced these realms of experience in daily life and as a profession, as a priest, a Shinto
Mm,
priest. And so my personal experience along the lines that we've been talking about helped me see the importance of getting CIHS as a small university accredited
yeah.
in the world. And so it really kind of supported my ability to do that because it's a really hard thing to do to get a university accredited. And
Yeah,
you
no
wouldn't do it unless you
kidding.
really believed that it was important for some reason.
Yeah. And
Why would you put yourself through that? Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, these experiences really supported my ability to do those kinds of things in the world.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I love it. And it's like, it just shows how these expanded states of consciousness, like, because you can see the possibility, you can be passionate about it, about where you're going. It's like, you know where you're going, you know what you want the world to know, basically, to live a better, more fulfilling life.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it still is evolving for me, like, not in with ions, and ions is in process of reconnecting with its, past interest from its founding by Edgar Mitchell, interest in the UAP phenomenon. It used to be called
Oh,
UFO phenomenon.
yeah.
And my appreciation of that whole phenomenon is really evolving even recently. And because we're understanding and serious UAP UFO
Hmm.
scholars are understanding that that whole phenomenon at base is a consciousness based phenomenon.
Yeah.
Or consciousness is really central to it. There's something absolutely physical about it too. But this interaction of the consciousness and the physical is really at the center, at the base of that whole phenomenon. And it's hard to wrap your mind around, the
Yeah.
idea that the supposed craft, like some of them that have been recovered by humans, they're, they're driven by consciousness, supposedly. And so that's a
Yeah.
really big leap for the conventional scientific mind to think that that could happen.
But I feel like the timing is so perfect that this is all coming to light because you think about AI and what we're starting to learn about. We're only like as humans, we can only begin to grasp the rapid development. Say, how can I put it? With AI, you can rapidly analyze data in an intelligent manner that we could not before and make
Yes.
connections. It's like the neural nets are it's phenomenal, like what we can actually do. Even in the last 2 years, we really started to adopt this. And then you can really see how with just like now we can imagine, oh, imagine with utilizing the tools of AI that we have for us to create practical tools to help us do things, would we be able to create a craft that we merely control with our minds? And we can already see how that would be possible, which then will open up our mind to really thinking about how other civilizations might already be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you've personally experienced some kind of powerful connection of consciousness to your own physical body, and then you through experience, you know that there can be this kind of connection, and like you say, then maybe very far advanced civilizations, intelligences might have figured out whole ways to work with that as a that process as a technology, and that's in a whole new category that
Yeah.
really interfaces consciousness with physical, and because we don't have the scientific framework to understand that yet,
Mm.
and our scientific framework really can't see that. It's it's largely people who've had some kind of personal experience that realize that that kind of thing does happen in the world. It can happen in the world, and that need to push forward the framework, the new frameworks that can let us as a human family
Yeah.
really engage with this whole new domain of reality.
Entirely.
Mm.
Yeah, and I like how I was looking at the IONS mission, the updated strategic plan of like normalizing these experiences in the world. And not to make this an IONS talk, but looking at Dean Radin's latest book and even your book, which is so far ahead of its time, which I think you should do a re-release on actually, really looking at the intersection of physics and psychic phenomenon, quote, magical phenomenon, which really isn't magic when you look at the physics behind it,
Yeah,
so and to bring that out to the world so it becomes more common knowledge for people so they don't go, oh my god, I was thinking about Aunt Sarah and she called, isn't that amazing? It's more like, oh yeah, I was thinking about Aunt Sarah and yeah, she called, of course she did. So things become more normal because we realize it is a normal phenomenon,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Dean's book is wonderful, and it's about all the multiple kinds of evidence that what we call magical phenomena do happen. A lot of scientific, carefully controlled scientific
Yeah.
experiments published in peer review, and all of this evidence that it actually happens. And the the link though of connecting traditional standard physics, modern physics, quantum
Hmm.
physics to that phenomena, that still isn't there yet. That kind of theoretical framework still isn't there. We have this understanding now that we know that basically all scientists accept quantum physics as the foundation of all of modern science. But and the the foundations of quantum physics are still not resolved.
Yeah.
The measurement problem
Yeah.
is still not resolved.
Yeah.
The there's something about the observer interacts with the collapse of the quantum state
Mm.
function, but how and how to integrate that process into the the rest of the standard physical physics is still not done yet,
Yeah.
and Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein, they were arguing about this since the 1920s, and the leaders in the field are still arguing
Hmm.
about this because we don't have this new framework yet. But we
I
have
know.
tons of evidence that magical type things happen, and that's what Dean writes about wonderfully.
Right. Non-locality. It is
Yeah.
like, and we could talk for a whole other hour on that alone because it's like when I was studying theoretical physics, that's something that really bothered me about like, why do we have a constant? That's just like putting like an X in like an algebra problem and that as a placeholder. Why are we doing this? So there are so many questions that I had about physics that I see the questions are still being asked. But there was, I don't know if IONS put this out or what institution put this question out a while ago, but if you can come up with a mathematical equation or or a model that integrates into quantum physics about consciousness. So, for example, what creates life? What is it that creates the spark of life? And that to me is what we're barely missing.
Yeah.
That is the spark of consciousness. There is no scientific model for this. I mean, it's like we don't have the answer. And I feel like that is where the answer to so many of these questions will be answered once we have that, because that's what we're missing
That's
with
kind of a
everything.
sub theme of
Yeah.
my book that you mentioned, Mechanism Demands
Yeah.
Mysticism. And it's a very tricky thing to do, though,
Mm.
in the science, because quantum physics, entanglement experience, that's the experiments, that's what you were talking about, the
Yeah.
non-locality, action at a distance. And that's what Einstein and Bohr were arguing about.
Yeah. Totally.
Einstein couldn't handle it either. And basically Bohr said, yeah, you can't understand it, but it works. Just do the quantum calculations, and it behaves that way. And Einstein was saying, but this is crazy. And but we now know it does behave that way, and but we still can't understand it. And so maybe there's maybe we cannot understand it at the logical positives at
Mhm.
the purely formal operational thinking logic stage, and maybe that's what. Like in the Zen tradition, that's why you focus on questions that can be stated in the koan tradition, that you're asked to solve, a question like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? That a question that has no logical answer, but does
Mhm.
have an answer in the next level beyond the rational.
Mm.
And that's probably the only way we can understand these quantum mysteries too, because things happen just in standard little quantum entanglement experiments that you can't really explain at the logical level.
Which makes you say, like to me, I always say the truth lies in the anomaly. It's always the anomaly. That's where the truth,
Yeah,
we don't have all the information yet, but it's exciting. I don't know. This stuff never gets old, you know?
yeah, it's the edge of life.
It really is. So let's see. Actually, I so appreciate your time. And I'm wondering, is there anything else you'd like to share about any of the things we've talked about, Kundalini experiences, transcendent experiences, quantum physics, UAPs, anything else?
Uh, Just keep on with the quest, and if you're starting to experience things that make you wonder if you're going crazy, uh, don't worry about it. You're probably
Yeah.
not. These things happen. It's possible you might be technically crazy, but you're probably not watching this video all the way to the end if you are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful to chat with you today and to share all of this with the Wild Divine Bliss podcast guests. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
Kareem.
how could they get in touch with you and learn more about your work?
Through the link at Ion's website.
Okay, great. And I'll put
Yeah.
that in the show notes for sure. And I'll put a link to your book as well.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kareem.
Thank you for listening to the Wild Divine Bliss podcast. If you've had a Kundalini experience or some kind of spontaneous spiritual event that completely changed your world, well, you're not crazy and you're definitely not alone. There are more grounded, intelligent people navigating this than you might think.